Hi, everybody. I'm Monique Saucier. I'm a sports management major, and today I'm interviewing Kellen Saucier, who is a manager at Lavina Paintball in Dusson. So I just have a few questions to ask him. He pretty much is in charge of just stuff at the paintball field, including stuff like the budget, running everything, stuff like that. So the first question I have for you is who at the paintball field is in charge of budgeting and finance? That's you, correct?
Absolutely. In charge of budgeting and finances at Lavina Paintball LLC is either myself, Kellen, the senior manager of Lavina Paintball, or Damian Parcells, the CEO slash owner of Lavina Paintball LLC.
The second question I have for you is are there any policies that you must follow when making any kind of change in the budget?
Obviously, any change in the budget, any kind of spending protocol that needs to be approved or have policies to follow, just needs to necessarily be verified and approved by the owner. Everything gets ran through him because it is a small business, sole proprietorship by Damian Parcells. So pretty much he reserves the final say so. But in terms of budgeting, him and I co communicate on a lot of ideas and a lot of decisions that need to be made in order to better just kind of advance earning potential for the small business or just the idea in general.
Okay. The third question I have for you is how often is the budget revised and what type of input do you collect from any of the employees there at the field?
The budget is revised on a it's kind of like a rolling. I guess it'd be revised on a rolling timetable because obviously the paintball field opened, Lavina opened and started from the ground up, so didn't have a lot in terms of what to offer to their customer base. So the budget is always expanding based on the increasing revenues that the field is able to bring in, and always adding to the entertainment value of the field for the client base. So to answer the question for the time frame, the budget is revised continuously based on needs that come up or ideas that could potentially increase our customer base or sales revenue being brought in by the field. To answer the second part of the question, the employees are not usually have any information collected or any input for the budget. The sole purpose probably that the employees serve that could be correlated to the budget is we will conference with them from time to time or just ask their opinions about new ideas or what they're hearing from the customer base as to what the customer base desires to move the field, the brand, and the field and the entertainment value in the right direction to where we're better meeting our customers' needs. That would probably be the only avenue of information that we're collecting from our employees. And it would just be strictly just because they're the first line of engagement with the customer base. And so they're probably, if not just getting a word of mouth straight from the customer base, they are the first line of interaction. So that's probably the most valuable information that we could definitively correlate and integrate with the decisions being made um, for a budget reasons.
Okay. Um, the where am I? Oh, okay. The fourth question is do all of the employees have access to the budget? Why or why not?
No, the employees do not have any access to the budget whatsoever. The reason being for that is because, in terms of financial matters, it's best to keep a budget in terms of people who have a vested interest or the difference between stakeholders or shareholders. So usually stakeholders, have something involved in the business, but in this case, shareholders, or since it's a sole proprietorship, Damien and his family are the ones that are strictly, you know, involved or directly affected by that, whereas employees are just collecting a paycheck. So there's no reason to include them in any kind of budget decisions because they're not directly affected by. I mean, they're stake in the business is not directly affected by budgetary decisions being made going forward, as long as they are still earning their same wage that is being paid to them, and or possibly a promotion. Usually that does not, there's no input from the employee's standpoint other than, like I stated previously, collecting ideas from them on what best to work into the budget going forward. But that decision is ultimately made between the shareholders. Damien pretty much solely, and then conferencing with myself and or a few other team leaders that have shares in the field.
Okay. Going on to my fifth question, which would be, how are budget figures derived from year to year or season to season?
Repeat the question just one more time.
How are budget figures derived from year to year?
How's the budget derived from year to year? The budget is formulated on a year-to-year basis based on sales projections on a monthly average. So obviously there is a season, a better season, a high season, and a low season for the paintball industry. So the budget, like I said before, is a rolling budget that is implemented on probably a month-to-month basis based on the needs of the field. So like I said, it's derived from the average sales volume and revenue that the field is bringing in based on years prior. So in corresponding months. So March is based on the March of last year because we're expecting in South Louisiana similar weather, similar holidays, similar schools letting out, traffic based on the time of year. It's correlated based on that, and from that information, we can kind of gauge in terms of sales revenue what we did last year, kind of based on the equipment. So if we've made any expanses in equipment, say we had 40 guns last year and we now have 60 guns, and last year we have on record that we turned down 3 or 4 parties based on shortage of equipment. Well, we'll take into account budgetary. We'll base our budget based on the solid evidence that we had X number of parties last year and X number of sales revenue coming in. That's what we'll base our budget going forward on. Usually anything else, if we had an expanse in equipment like I talked about, that will usually fall into a surplus and be stated on our records going forward for the next year, because then we will be, adapt and able to accommodate that many people going forward and might have a better, more accurate information on what our budget confinements can be going forward into the next couple of years. Therefore, say in March, for example, we could make what we're going to do field expanses, different kind of maintenance issues, payroll, based on the budget calculations that we made off of the years prior, and anything that is surplus will fall into an account that we will budget going forward that may fall into more of a capital gains, more property gains, something that is not planned in the budget when we set it out. Something that could potentially increase our sales revenue or customer base tenfold, or have a more positive long-term effect, versus the budget is usually for the short term in order to meet expenses, just to meet your credits and your debits of a month-to-month basis. That's usually what we're budgeting for in the short term. And then usually the surplus is always allotted to long-term improvements or investments.
Okay. What are the 3 most important facets associated with the budget process?
Well, the first and foremost important facet of a budget process is accurate information regarding your sales revenue or net income. That is the first and foremost important part of the budgeting process, because you need to know how much money you're bringing in on a month-to-month basis, or if possible, a week-to-week basis, because then you can accurately forecast what you're going to do for the month and possibly the year. And you can calculate down to a couple $10 of where you want to be and what you're going to be doing, and what you expect to have as that a return from that. The second most important part or facet of the budgeting process is your expenses. So obviously, in any basic accounting class, you're going to have your incomes and your outcomes. Those are the first 2 more important parts. And the third most important part is kind of what I've referenced to previously, is long-term investments or long-term growth or value, brand expansion, anything of that nature. That's the third part, is that, after we handle the incomes and outcomes of a month-to-month budget or a yearly budget, then whatever we have surplus or left over, or if we have enough to work it into the budget, we need to be looking at long-term growth, how to take the business or revenue to that next level long term. You make sure that we're always planning to have the business sustain itself.
Okay, cool. Um, Seventh question would be, ultimately, who here at the paintball field is accountable for the budget process?
Accountable for the budget process. For the process, it would be solely Damien, because he is the lone shareholder, ultimate shareholder in the business. Um, is in terms of information regarding the budgeting process, myself and a few others that have, either contributed or have equity in the business, um, are part of that process. But ultimately, as a sole proprietorship, the owner is the one that, final say so as terms of processes or decision making regarding any kind of budgeting, I guess, on a month to month basis.
Gotcha. And I know you had said that earlier in the interview as well. And my last question is, what kind of technology do y'all use around the paintball field and associated with budgeting?
Associated with the technology that we use is pretty, I guess, I can't recall the program, but it's a point of sale system on an iPad, or using Square through an iPhone to just track in revenues. All of that data is uploaded to a database, and then obviously from there, it's a real simple system. Probably just QuickBooks. QuickBooks would be the most simplest program that we use just to keep track of expenditures and revenues. Other than that, everything is done by hand. Unfortunately, that's probably an area that we could expand in as terms of inventory and different kinds of party bookings and whatnot. Usually, it's all been done by hand. I know that just recently we have used our domain and our website to start doing party bookings, so that is digitalized. Another area that we have been doing by hand, but up until now, most of the budgeting stuff has been done by hand. Simply what you could do with the checkbook, as far as balancing, what's coming in and what's going out in terms of expenses. And like I said before, everything that's surplus is just rolled into a separate account, and is what's the word, brought into the budget at some point in time in the future, like probably in the next few months, because you always have to, in case anything goes wrong, like weather. There's definitely down South Louisiana, you can't really predict for weather. But in terms of technology, again, there's not much going on in terms of the budgeting process. It is really simple. There's not a whole lot of moving parts, with it just being a small business with, it's just a paintball field. So what we offer is paintball. It's pretty easy to track. There's not really a need to bring in a lot of technology, because at this point in time that would just be another added expense. Whereas keeping everything on track by hand or manually is not costing us a lot of money at this time. Obviously, if there's greater expanses in the future, then probably implementing more technology would be of more importance to us in the future.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering my questions and spending some time with me.
You're very welcome, Monique.
Bye.